Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of Ask CPS. My name is Dr. Raisa Chonkofat. I'm a medical doctor, infectious disease control, and an epidemiologist currently working at CPS. Unfortunately, our esteemed host, Cedric Peterson, cannot be here today, so I will be doing my best to take over his task. I'm a little nervous. This is, of course, not my day job, so bear with me at times. In this episode, we'd like to focus on hurricane preparedness, where we are specifically focusing on how this is taking place in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic that the world and St. Martin is facing. So on tonight's episode, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Pauletta, Ms. Henry, and Mr. Davelaar. And I would now like to ask you to introduce yourself to the public. Mr. Pauletta, if you would go first.
Good afternoon. My name is Giovanni Pauletta, and I work at the Fire Department. The Fire Department is a department that falls under the Ministry of General Affairs, and the department is headed by the Fire Chief Clive Richardson. And within the department, there are 4 sections. Section Repression, which deals with the trucks. We have material and logistics that ensures that the firefighters have all the material and the trucks and everything up to par. We have the section Disaster Management, and also we have section Prevention, Preparation, Training and Education, and that's the department I'm section head of.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pauletta, and welcome to this episode today. We are very pleased that you were willing to be on the show today. Ms. Henry, would you like to introduce yourself to the public?
My name is Maria Henry, and I am section head of General Healthcare located within the Collective Prevention Services and responsible for information, response, surveillance, and vector activities.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining this episode also today. I would also like to ask now Mr. Davelaar to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm pleased to be in this first edition of Ask CPS. My name is Jared Davelaar. I'm the coordinator of the Vector Control Program of CPS. Our team is very small, but still, being a small team, we try to think out of the box in order to get the word out to the community how to mitigate mosquito breeding sites.
Thank you also very much for being on this episode. Today we'll be talking about EOC and ESFs, and specifically how CPS has been preparing for the hurricane season and how that's been different this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I hope everyone is staying safe and that you enjoy the program. You are watching Ask CPS. We'll be right back after the short commercial break.
Safety tips on how to use your mask. Wear your mask in public places. When removing your mask, properly take your mask off by grabbing the bottom ties of your mask, then the ties at the top, and remove the mask. When disposing the mask, discard the mask in the trash can and do not litter. Safety first. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth until washing your hands thoroughly for 20 seconds. These safety tips are brought to you by Collective Prevention Services and the Department of Communication.
St. Martin has experienced its fair share of hurricanes over the past 25 years, and we faced them all head on. We've witnessed horrific seasons with staggering loss of property, but this year might be the most destructive of all. The destructive power of hurricanes coupled with the debilitating coronavirus pandemic. Where do you run? Where can you hide? Now is the time to prepare. Think about how and where you'll evacuate to reduce crowds at shelters and maintain social distancing. Have a plan for keeping your elderly family members safe. We live in a hurricane-prone area, so start gathering essential hurricane supplies now. Things like plywood, batteries, generators. Strengthen your home as much as possible while you have time on your hands. While preparing for the hurricane season, follow the latest health guidelines at stmartingov.org/coronavirus. And remember, it only takes one to make it a bad season, so make sure you're prepared.
This public service announcement is brought to you by the Government of St. Martin.
Welcome back to episode 7 of Ask CPS. I am Dr. Raisa Chonkofat, and this is Ask CPS. So today we were talking about hurricane preparedness and specifically dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So today we've invited a few guests to discuss hurricane preparedness. And as you know, from the 1st of June 2020, hurricane season has officially started. And as we are still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, we would like to inform the public on what is happening to prepare for possible hurricanes on St. Martin. So to do this, we've invited Mr. Pauletta. Mr. Pauletta, you introduced yourself just now, but could you introduce yourself also as in what your relation is with respect to EOC?
In the EOC, I coordinate the ESF4, which is the one that the services of the fire department. So I coordinate that session.
Okay, thank you very much. So EOC was activated for a few months due to the COVID-19 pandemic and has just recently been deactivated. So what are some of the reasons that EOC can be activated?
Well, an EOC is actually activated in case of a disaster. And a disaster can be defined as an event during which public safety is severely disturbed or life, health, and well-being of many persons, the environment, or large materials are being threatened or are damaged. So, and also in those cases where a coordinated deployment is necessary. So, Doctor, it's all a matter of scale.
So you mean when it's the bigger the scale, then EOC gets activated, depending on whatever reasons for that?
Yes. In the past, we have been accustomed of having the EOC activated in case of hurricanes, but the EOC is actually an organization that is there for any kind of disaster. In St. Martin, we mainly know the hurricanes, but many more things can happen, like tsunamis, plane crashes, accidents at sea, and as we have recently experienced, also pandemic event like COVID-19.
And since when has this EOC structure been in place?
Well, after the way that we know the EOC as it is organized now, this has been organized after Hurricane Lewis and has been put in place and has actually been executed during Hurricane Lenny in November '99. After which, shortly, the legislation was put in place.
And how often does EOC meet as soon as it is activated?
Well, the chairperson, which is the Prime Minister, decides how often the EOC meets. So it meets as often as deemed necessary. It could be once a day, it could be twice a day, it could be once a week. It really depends the situation.
And is EOC usually also structured for as long? I mean, is it the whole hurricane season, or is it only when there's a natural disaster? How do we have to look at that?
The EOC basically is activated the moment that coordination between the different ESFs, so ESF stands for Emergency Service function, which is actually an action center. You have different action centers. When the coordination is needed, they meet, and it's per event. So it's not at the beginning of the hurricane season, but it's per hurricane, per threat of the island, the EOC can be activated.
Mm-hmm. So the
moment that the threat is gone,
mm-hmm.
or coordination is no longer needed, then it will be deactivated.
And you were discussing the different ESFs. How is EOC actually structured?
Yes, that's a good question. So the EOC actually consists of 10 emergency servant functions, which are, you could see it like 10 action centers. And each action center is specialized in certain functions. So to just summarize it, if you look at the 10, we have, first of all, ESF 1, which is utilities, so basically GB, water and energy. ESF 2 is telecommunications. ESF 3 will be public works, infrastructure and logistics. ESF 4, safety, hazardous materials and rescuing, fire department. ESF 5, public order, security and traffic regulation, so the justice. ESF 6, medical assistance and public health, so basically where CPS is part of. ESF 7 is evacuation and sheltering. ESF 8 is public information and awareness. ESF 9, governmental affairs. ESF 10, seaport, airport, and hotel activities. These 10 are actually headed by the department heads or secretary generals, and these ESFs, they basically are it's the same organization as in daily life. Only in this case, there's a coordinated effort on a specific disastrous event.
Okay, thank you very much. It seems like there's many different partners in all the ESFs. One last question. How are the ESFs preparing for hurricane season?
Well, the ESFs, they have a sub-plan. And in the sub-plan, the processes that they are responsible for are described. And then you have an action plan, which is basically a plan for a specific event. And hurricanes is an event that frequently returns back to the island. And so at the beginning of the hurricane season, prior to the hurricane season, the ESFs already start making sure that they are prepared to execute their action plan in case we see the forming of an hurricane and it's coming in our direction.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just wondering, is it different now, the preparation for hurricane season, because of the COVID-19 pandemic? Or it doesn't affect the planning?
The social distancing affects everything in the society as we know it. So of course it also affects the plans as we had them, and the plans have been adjusted accordingly so that even with the social distancing we can be properly prepared and ready to execute if necessary.
Thank you very much. This was very enlightening to hear more about the EOC and ESF. You are watching Ask CPS. We are going now to a short commercial break, and we will be right back.
You ever hear earthquake call and say, "Hello, Mr. Mara, it's me. Earthquake coming in Tuesday around 10. No, sir. Earthquake does arrive unannounced, and when it comes, it'll shake all the sense and the sensibility out of we. Remain calm, stay inside, and do the DCH. Drop, cover, hold on. Once the shaking start and you know it's an earthquake, make a quick move to a safe place. Don't run to the doorway or any exit, and the stairs that may be broke up or even full of people. Elevator, avoid that because you might get in and then poof, power gone, and you're stuck in a box without air. Take cover under a strong table or a bed, or crouch against an inside wall or in a corner and cover your face and your head with your arms. Remember, DCH. Drop, cover, hold on. Glass windows and doors, outside walls in an earthquake, that is bad news. Take care of yourself. Most injuries during earthquakes happen when something drops and hit people entering or exiting a building. Last thing, don't bother run outside and ask, "You feel it? You feel it?" Remain calm, stay indoors until all the shaking stop and do the DCH. Drop, cover, hold on.
This public service announcement was brought to you by Sedima and the government of St. Martin.
This upcoming hurricane season will be a difficult one. With the pandemic going on, it is essential to be even more prepared this upcoming hurricane season. Have your hurricane kit with all the essentials. Make sure that you have enough canned foods and crackers and bottled water for any eventualities. Make sure you keep up to date and get your information from the official governmental communication sources and services of the Department of Communication, DCOM. This message is brought to you by the Government of St. Martin and the Department of Communication. Sources and services of the Meteorological Department of St. Martin and the Department of Communication, DCOM, at Facebook.com/SXMGov, the website stmartingov.org/hurricane, the radio station 107.9 FM, and the YouTube channel Government of St. Martin. This message is brought to you by the Government of St. Martin and the Department of Communication.
Welcome back to Ask CPS. This is episode 7. So just before the break, we were talking to Mr. Pauletta about the EOC structure and the different ESFs. And we got into quite an interesting discussion on what the different ESFs are doing to prepare for hurricane season. And we're talking about the different stakeholders within the ESFs. But also, are there also stakeholders outside of government, or is this only within government?
That's a very interesting question there, Doctor. Indeed, disaster management and disaster response is an effort of many stakeholders in government, but also outside of government. So you will have different NGOs. I'm not going to start mentioning them before I sing. It looks like I single out anyone, but you have the different NGOs who would either assist with distribution or shelter management, and all of that, they do it under coordination of the different ESFs. So, and the ESFs are coordinated by the ESF coordinator, who together are coordinated by the National Disaster Coordinator, which is the fire chief. And the whole EOC itself is chaired by the Prime Minister, who also does have the other stakeholders abroad. So it's a joint effort coordinated by government.
Thank you very much. So it is quite an extensive groups of and organizations that are working together in this disaster management structure. Yeah. So to go a little further into what the health side, with respect to the health side, so we wanted to look into what is CPS doing to prepare for hurricane season. So Ms. Henry, what does CPS actually do to prepare for any hurricane season?
One of the things we do is we review our hurricane plan. As I was saying, we have 2 phases, pre-hurricane, where we share information to the general public in regards to certain items that they should have within their home, and also as example, in medication, sufficient medication, also food, and also water. And we also give information in regards to the water quality, to maintain the water and thereafter the next phase is in regards to being out in the field in regards to surveillance, vector, and information and vaccination. And to make sure that our staff, which is now busy with COVID response, are more or less the same staff who will be responding in a disaster, that their disaster cards are in order and they can move about within the community. We also review, and there's a schema, a time scheme that we look at in getting ready in regards to reviewing the information and make sure we are honest and discuss our plan on how we will respond.
So what is actually CPS's role after a hurricane? So let's go back to Hurricane Irma, for instance. What did CPS do after this hurricane?
Well, it depends in regards to the impact that a disaster will bring to the community. After Irma, we concentrated on vaccinating the community, making sure that the vaccination coverage maintain a certain level. We also assist by the shelter or give information to the shelter management. One of our tasks is also surveillance, to be able to monitor and identify if there are any infectious diseases circulating, that we would be able to give information in regards to the prevention of that particular infectious disease. At this time in Irma, there were really no heavy increase in regards to infectious diseases. There were in regards to gastroenteritis, and where we concentrated on giving information on water, making sure your water is clean and how to ensure that your water quality is up to par. And then the team for the vector, the small team that we have, they also went out in the community in regards to monitoring the vector control, to give information on vector, but also rodents. So after the hurricane, we tend to go into the field to ensure that the infectious disease risk is very minimal.
And because of this infectious disease risk, are the preparations for hurricane season different now that with relation to the pandemic, to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes, because as I said just now, it's the same team that is busy with the response for the pandemic, right? At this moment, it's the same team that should be ready for the response to the disaster, any disaster that we would have in the next couple of months. So in regards to preparedness, that preparedness for hurricane response and hurricane disaster is influenced in regards to the timeline, because you also would have to have that team motivated and updated in regards to how our plan is going to be for our response to the disaster.
Thank you. I think it's clear that CPS is busy and preparing for hurricane season while also still dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. You mentioned vector control. Now, Mr. Davelaar, is this a busy season for vector control, the hurricane season? Is there more preparations necessary?
Well, I think before every season, especially the hurricane, vector control has to be ready and on par to go out if the urgency arises. As Ms. Henry just mentioned, that vector control has also a pre and post hurricane preparedness. That is when we go before the hurricane, we check our materials, our equipment, that's testing them to see if everything is working okay, check if we have sufficient chemicals, in order, if the need arises after a disaster such as the hurricane, that we're ready to go. So basically, it's more or less in the same line as CPS preparedness team. The vector control has also need to prepare for such a disaster.
And let's take it a step back for persons who are watching. What exactly is vector control? What kind of activities are related to vector control? And what is actually a vector?
Well, a vector is the host that helps transmit the virus, such as the mosquitoes. That is for dengue, chikungunya, or Zika. You have also the rodent, which is the rat, that is also the host for other type of viruses that can be transmitted to those type of vector. So basically, vector has a lot of way to deal with information that you have to send out to the community, not only for mosquito but also for rodents. And as January starts, we have to start with giving out information to the public so that year in, year out, they have to deal with the mosquito breeding sites. Well, for us, it is very important that the breeding sites are as much eliminated as possible, because not only for the hurricane season, but also for the other months of the year.
And you were saying that people have to make sure that there's no mosquito breeding sites. What can people actually do? What can they do at their home to, with respect to vector control?
Okay, basically, our information plan consists of letting the community know what type of artifacts, of containers they need to look out for. We have one slogan is "Get the water out." We use it in the past already to let the people know that whatever can collect water will become a breeding site. It can be from a small drop of a Coca-Cola bottle till a system that collects a lot of water. So those type of artifacts need different type of treatment so that you can ensure that they will not breed mosquitoes.
So does this mean that during hurricane season, the focus is on mosquitoes, or also on, you were talking about rats and other vectors? Is the focus more on mosquitoes because of the rain, etc., more water?
I think after a disaster, sanitation is very important. And with sanitation, you will get mosquitoes and rats population. And in order to deal with them, you have to let the community know that it's not only breeding sites for mosquitoes you have to deal with, but also breeding sites for rats. Because when you have a storm like Irma we had 2 to 3 years ago, it will damage all the breeding sites, so they will run and come in the houses. So that's why it is important for you to have clear all those type of materials around your house so that they won't become breeding sites for also rats.
Thank you, Mr. Davelaar, for all this information on vector control. Thank you to all our invited guests, Mr. Pauletta, Ms. Henry, and Mr. Davelaar, for being on today's episode. Thank you for taking the time to inform the public on all the work that is being done by EOC and the different ESFs, and from CPS, which falls within ESF 6. And with that, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to receiving your questions for next week's episode. You can send your questions and comments to our mailbox at askcps@stmartingov.org. Have a good day, and remember to stay safe, strong, and united.